to item 5.3. This is an item the board asked the chancellor to come back with and report on. I think all of us expressed great concern at our last meeting about the accreditation issues some of our colleges face, in particularly three of them, and I've asked the chancellor to talk about all three, but to really focus in on what may be a more dire situation as we've all read at San Francisco City College. So with that, Chancellor.
Thank you. Let's just clarify a few things about accreditation. Number one, the Accreditation Commission is totally independent. It does not answer to the Chancellor's office. It is funded by contributions from colleges, and it includes not only California, but it includes Hawaii and two-year colleges in the South Pacific, which are rather small in number, but they are out there. It also includes private two-year colleges. It's called WASC. There are 6 regional accrediting commissions throughout the United States, and this is one of them. Now, I have on occasions been concerned over what I thought was perhaps a little too harsh approach taken by the Accrediting Commission. And as you know, the Consultation Council did appoint a task force, and we did make some contact with the Accreditation Commission. But when I addressed this issue of show cause to 3 colleges, I have made it very clear to them that it was not time to argue with the Accrediting Commission about whether they were harsh or too lenient. And I used some fairly graphic illustrations. On one occasion I said, if a city comes to a restaurant and says to a restaurant, you are violating certain codes, and unless you change your behavior, we're going to close down your restaurant. Now, probably the restaurant owner would not spend a lot of time arguing with the ones who came in and made those recommendations. Instead, the restaurant owner would be wise enough to say, I need to clear up the violations. So I've tried to say to these 3 colleges, now is not the time for argument. You can sit here and argue for the next year, and you can find yourself unaccredited. Now is the time to correct the things, the deficiencies that have been cited by the Accrediting Commission, so that you no longer will be on show cause. Show cause is the most serious sanction. It simply says that if in a year's time you do not completely, or you do not at least make a huge effort toward clearing up these deficiencies, you'll lose your accreditation. Now, we've had only one college in California that happened to, and that was Compton College. And that was, frankly, a disaster. To this day, they're not accredited. They have been taken over by El Camino College. They are only a center of El Camino College. So if these 3 colleges need to do everything that they can to avoid that show cause leading to the loss of accreditation. That's my prelude. And that's the message that I gave to these colleges. I visited the College of the Redwoods. I was encouraged by the progress they were making. They were frankly working hard. They had formed committees, and it looked like, to me, they're on their way to removing that show cause. They've appointed a new president. She's a very capable woman, Kathy Lerner. She was formerly president of Mendocino College. And so my report, and I actually visited there on April 6th, my report from College of the Redwoods is rather positive, and I would be astounded if they did not, if the sanction wasn't removed. I also have good confidence with Cuesta College. I talked with the president of the college, Gil Stork. They have brought in 2 very capable individuals, John Nixon and Ava Conrad. John Nixon was formerly a member of the commission, formerly president of Mount San Antonio College, is a very respected individual. And they admitted that their accreditation liaison officer previously had not done the job. They replaced her with another accreditation liaison officer. So I felt good about Cuesta College. So I've had 2 phone conversations with President Stork. And now we come to City College of San Francisco, which is frankly the most complex of all of these colleges that have been placed on show cause. The Accrediting Commission had 14 recommendations. They indicated to the City College of San Francisco that unfortunately the City College of San Francisco had inadequately responded to recommendations that had been made by the Accrediting Commission 6 years before. Some were not even addressed, some were partially addressed. Now, I have thought in my own mind what would happen if the City College of San Francisco were to be unaccredited. And if you think Compton is a disaster, this would be a far greater disaster. What would happen? Would any of the neighboring colleges be willing to take them over? Frankly, I doubt it. I think the neighboring colleges, the colleges of the San Mateo District, the Peralta District, the Marin District, they've got enough problems of their own. And so I don't think there's anybody who will easily step up to the plate if that were to happen. And I don't know what would happen in terms of, would we just simply say, would all those students start going to neighboring colleges? What would happen to the apportionment there? These are, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that's probably something that we don't want to contemplate. We prefer, by all means, that's not happening. Now, we have immediately begun to do everything we can to help solve the problem. Chairman Scott Himmelstein and I met with John Rizzo, the chair of the board, in Sacramento on July 16th. We had a very frank conversation. We then went on August 6th to the Board of Trustees meeting and made a presentation. The board, I think, was pretty receptive. There was an element there that was, in my judgment, unwilling to accept the realities of the situation. They were saying, carrying placards, vote no on austerity, City College belongs to the people, and in their public testimony, they want to spend all their time castigating the Accrediting Commission, saying don't change anything substantially here at San Francisco City College. We like it just the way it is. To me, it was kind of like, when you go to the alcoholic and say you've got a problem, and the problem says, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem at all. Well, first, if you're going to cure a situation, somebody's got to accept a diagnosis. And there seemed to be a very difficult time in accepting that diagnosis. Now, we've done all we can at the Chancellor's Office to help City College of San Francisco. We paid for a FICMAT team. What is FICMAT? FICMAT is a crisis management team that comes in and looks only at the fiscal nature of a college. And this was a very strong team of about 6 members, and their report is going to be given on September 18th. I've read a draft of that report. I'm not at liberty to reveal all the contents of that report because it's only in a draft form, and it will be September 18th is the date on which it will be publicly pointed out. But I will have to be honest with you and say that it is fairly negative in terms of the fiscal situation of the City College of San Francisco. I can say without any doubt that last year they ran a deficit of $4.9 million. In other words, their revenues were $4.9 million less than their expenses. Well, I don't have to be a prophet to tell you that that eventually takes you off of a financial cliff. If you were to investigate my own personal finances and say, Jack, you know, you're spending $10,000 more than you're taking in, I could not very easily survive very long on that. So I'd have to change my behavior. They did have some reserves, but, you know, when you spend your reserves, that's one-time money. You've got to some way or another make the corrections that are necessary in order to bring your fiscal house in order. And it appears that for a long time, the City College of San Francisco, faced with the kind of dire cuts that all the colleges have been faced with, have just sort of said, we're going to keep doing everything we've done before. Now they've got to face reality, and unfortunately, I think there's an inclination on the part of that board to face reality. But they have a tough job because they have a lot of constituents out there that are saying, no, don't cut these courses, don't close down this center. It's a center I like to go to. Well, they have too many centers, frankly. Right now, 92% of their budget is spent on personnel. Well, anybody will tell you that a college probably should try to spend only 85% of its budget on personnel. When it gets up to over 90%, you don't have much room there to do any kind of maintenance or utilities or anything else. So I'm not trying to be morose or anything. I'm just trying to be honest. I've had a conversation with the mayor. The mayor is aware of their situation. In fact, interestingly enough, unfortunately, one member of the Board of Trustees passed away recently. And the mayor has the right to appoint someone to come in as a trustee to replace till an election is held. The mayor appointed an individual specifically who was fiscally conservative so that he felt like that board needed to take some fiscal steps. It's as I said, I've tried to use illustrations like the kind of illustration you will use with someone who's allowed their credit card debts to go too high. Finally, they meet with a financial planner, and the financial planner said, well, number one, you got to cut up all your credit cards. Number two, you got to quit taking those expensive vacations. Number three, don't eat out so often. And the list goes on and on. Here's austerity. Now, you know, none of us in the community college are happy with the fact that we've taken a 12% cut in the last 3 years. But that is the reality. And most colleges have faced that reality. They have reduced their course offerings. They have not replaced all of the faculty and counselors and administrators that retire or resign. They have decided that their course offerings, our course offerings have decreased by 17% in the last 3 years. So it's pretty clear that most colleges have said, we have to do some things we don't like to do, but that's the reality. So that's the situation at San Francisco College. Now, they have a very important vote tonight, and that is they're going to decide whether to ask for a special trustee. Most people who look at their fiscal situation suggest that they bring in a special trustee, but there's a very loud, vocal group within the college that doesn't want that to happen. Let me point out something that to this governing board. The Education Code 84040 says it is the intent of the legislature to encourage sound fiscal management practices among community college districts for the most efficient and effective use of public funds for the education of community college students by strengthening fiscal accountability at the district and state level. Then it goes on to give certain responsibilities to the Board of Governors. And I won't read this whole, if you want me to, I can be glad to give all of you a copy of this. But at one point it says, the Board of Governors by regulation shall develop appropriate procedures and actions for districts that fail to achieve fiscal stability or that fail to comply with the Board of Governors' recommendations. The procedures and remedies may include the appointment of a special trustee to manage the district. The Board of Governors shall be authorized to reduce or withhold apportionment to districts to pay for the cost of the special trustee, management review, or other extraordinary costs resulting from the district's fiscal difficulties, and to ensure the stabilization of the district's financial condition. It appears to me there are three options here. The first option is, and the preferred option, is that the Board of Trustees recognizes fully the fiscal situation, makes the changes that are necessary to bring the matter into balance. That's the desired one. A second one is after several months, and as I said, I think there are several key times. One is whether they will voluntarily appoint a special trustee. And on September 27th, the CEO that is there now will present a plan in order to meet the accreditation goals. Once again, how they react to that will be important. A second option is that this Board of Governors appoints a special trustee themselves if they feel like that the actions on the part of the City College of San Francisco are inadequate. And the third option is that we just go along like we are now, and in July, the accreditation is taken away. And if that happens, to be blunt, all hell will break loose. And it'll be a fiasco. It will hurt the city of San Francisco, and that's why, incidentally, the mayor is very much involved in this. He was frankly unhappy. They have a parcel tax on the ballot, which of course would help their financial situation, and they wanted the mayor to endorse, and I think he was to some degree inclined to do so, except they didn't point out to him that very shortly thereafter they were about to a sanction was to fall upon them that was show cause. And he was a little bit perturbed, I would say, over the fact that he was not given all the information that he needed. So the city is fully engaged. In other words, they know they don't want to see this happen. And I want to make it real clear. The City College of San Francisco has done some wonderful things. They've certainly served that community. No one questions that. But they have some significant deficiencies, and deficiencies that actually could lead to bankruptcy. And if bankruptcy occurs, as just occurred, by the way, in the Inglewood Public School District, if you read your papers, the state of California gave them a $5 million loan, but they then brought in a special trustee. And that special trustee had total fiscal control over that district, because the state of California is not going to loan money to a school district or a community college district and say, well, you can spend it any way you want to. It's a little bit where they foreclose your house, or something like that. The state of California says, yes, we will loan you the money, but we intend to not only loan you the money, but we now have taken the authority away from the local board of trustees, which is exactly what happened in Compton College. Now, as I said, I know I've been blunt here, but I'm being blunt not because I'm enjoying being blunt. I'm just trying to describe what I think is a very serious situation. And I will tell you this, that many of us in the Chancellor's office have done as much as we can to be as helpful as possible. We paid for the FICMAT review. We went over to the Board of Trustees. This board saw a sample of the radicalism of the City College of San Francisco at one of our meetings, if you may recall. And I thought this board conducted themselves in a very professional way. You listened, you didn't interrupt. There were some rather harsh things that were said, and then you simply voted. And, I want you to know that frankly, I don't think that was representative of the City College of San Francisco students. I think that was a kind of put up kind of thing that really, but if you want to get if that element in San Francisco is able to influence the Board of Trustees to not make difficult decisions, then it will be disastrous. If, on the other hand, the board is able to, and by the way, I think one of our own Board of Governor members is a very realistic board member over there, Natalie Berg. And I have admiration for her perception of this problem. And in the midst of all this, by the way, there are 4 of those board members that are up for re-election in November. So, I mean, it's kind of a perfect storm, you know. And then they recently, if you read your newspaper, they had a big problem on pensions. And you know, they must feel like Job, being visited with all kinds of afflictions. But it's not an easy situation, and I guess I'm more or less, I'm serving as a prophet that's standing here suggesting that things are rather difficult, and yet I'm leaving it up to you to solve it. So I regret that, and I wouldn't run away from a problem that had nothing to do with my retirement. But I am trying to be honest about it. Okay, I'll stop there and answer questions.
Okay, let me make a couple of comments first, because the Chancellor has been very good about communicating with me on this issue, and as he said, I've accompanied him to a couple of meetings, particularly at the meeting with the Board of Trustees in San Francisco. The Chancellor, I think, was maybe forceful is not the word, but very clear that he was recommending that the board there consider bringing on a special trustee. The truth of the matter, that was met with hisses, quite frankly, and other comments I won't repeat here. And I think, to be quite honest, although the Chancellor says that he thinks the board is somewhat inclined, and I probably agree with them, I want to be very clear with this board. We heard from at least 2 of the board members who were not inclined whatsoever to do that, and who, although I'm sure sincere, were just totally opposed to that kind of action, and what appeared to me as, I guess the Chancellor described it, not wanting to deal with the reality of the situation. So at the governance level, I think, and I hope the Chancellor's right, but it truly is in question in my mind, having sat in front of there, whether there is the will to pull the trigger on something like that. And it is complicated by November elections that trustees are going through. But looking at the material, interacting with the board chair and others, I will just tell my colleagues I'm quite concerned about the issue, and hopefully the right action or helpful action will happen today. But I think we need to be prepared to explore all of our options, which we have started to do with what the law says, right? And then give careful consideration as to what our next moves may be, because I think the last thing that we want is for this institution, which I believe is the largest in the state, Jack, is it not?
Well,
a single institution.
See, it's one, I think Mount SAC and City College of San Francisco, it depends on if you count all those centers.
Yeah.
I think they have 90,000 head count.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's clearly one of the largest community college districts in the state. It's one college, but many centers.
Yeah. So certainly for our next meeting, we're going to have an update and report. And if necessary, in between that time, I will be communicating with the chair of that board and making this board aware of what's happening. But I think we need to be prepared to consider and thoughtfully consider all our options. Member Baum, you were first.
Thank you for that report and update. It's of grave concern, and as a matter of fact, just by coincidence, it was 3 years ago that this board went to San Francisco City College to interact and learn more about that system, and it is one of the best institutions historically in the state of California. It's something that serves the community very well, and we're very proud of it. And as a result, we cannot afford to let the situation deteriorate any more than it has. And so I take very seriously our role as a governing board, that if we have to take action at some point, I hope that we will be prepared to do so in order to ensure the accreditation, the continuing accreditation of that institution. I've had the similar situation at my own district, which I chair, that there are factions within the district that have disrupted our meetings and tried to prevent action from being taken. That is not action we want to take when we reduce classes or change schedules, but in order to ensure the fiscal stability of the district for future generations of students, you have to take those. And it hasn't been pretty. The local paper had a cartoon on Sunday with a brush fire plane going over the mountains because we had brush fire, and instead dropping the retardant on the college, instead, because of all the tensions that have erupted over this summer on this. And it's not where we want to be, but I think it's where we have to be, and that's why I'm grateful to this board be that last best hope for the continued health of the system, and working with the new chancellor as well. I appreciate your leadership and the chancellor's leadership on that.
Member McDougall.
First, I think, and most important, I want to thank both the Chancellor and you, President Himmelstein, because I think in a situation such as this, the more that can be done on the preventative side, the better. And it seems to me that every conceivable action that could be taken has been taken. So I applaud the responsibility of the Chancellor and you representing the board to take that approach. Number two, I think all of us share the conclusion that the Chancellor represented, that the best case is for the local board to assume responsibility. And the hope would be at the September 27th meeting, when the Chancellor of that district gives a report, there will be a clear willingness to follow through on it. That being said, I concur with your comment of being prepared, and I think we have to operationally define being prepared. And I would like to offer at least a definition that if on September 27th there's not clear movement forward, there is so much at risk, given the 80 to 90,000 individuals who depend upon that college, that we should start immediately to develop an action plan, an outline for an action plan. If there are subsequent steps that are taken locally, that's to all our value. But as a board, given what has happened at this point, given of the failure of the district to not even follow through on the recommendations of the task of the visiting accreditation team 5 years before, never mind the most immediate team, that I think we have to not be overly optimistic, frankly, about what's going to happen. And therefore, the more we can do to develop that action plan, we need to do right away. So I would certainly urge that, but again, appreciation for the good efforts that have taken place up to this time.
Well, thank you, and that action plan started with our research of the law and what our responsibility is, what our options are, and we need to start from firm ground there. But you're right, from there, now what would be our steps depending on what happens, and we'll start on that immediately, and I'll keep the board informed, and if we need to get together on this, we'll do so. Other comments? Member Malamud.
I was just thinking if you could also let us know by email about how the vote turns out tonight and September 27th. So we'll be up to speed.
Can someone on the staff send that to the board? That would be great.
Thank you.
Great.
Question about scheduling, though,
Yeah.
too. Is it something that we would probably review and consider at our November meeting, or might there be a need for a special meeting before?
Depending on what happens, really, it's somewhat likely, in my view, that we would need to call a special meeting. Even if a special trustee was brought in by the local board, I'd want to be in a position, and staff as well, to be explained to this board, what's the plan, so that we're all, up to date. Who is this special trustee? When do they come on, and what are the expectations? So either way, that would be my sense, and would be my preference as well. So
There are 3 key dates. September 11th, which is today, the board meets to consider the recommendation of a special trustee. September 18th, the FICMAT report will be made public and no doubt will be covered by the press. And it will not be a pleasant document, I will simply say that. September 27th, the interim chancellor will present to the board what she considers to be the steps that City College of San Francisco needs to take in order to meet the Accrediting Commission's recommendations on solving the deficiencies. I will say the response on all of those will be very telling. And then after that, after September 27th, I think you will be in a better position. We will make sure, the staff will make sure, and by the way, Eric Skinner went with me to that board meeting, and we will make sure that you are kept informed about all this. And I believe that we have a comment by our general counsel.
Yeah, it's not so much a legal comment, but I just wanted to give you something to think about. Staff and I we've all been talking about this a lot, and Eric would probably come up and speak, but he was not here for the entire conversation, so I'll give the idea to the board. The City College of San Francisco, I think, would be aided by a showing by the Board of Governors that you are truly engaged in this issue and feel strongly about it. And the fact that you have expressed an interest to have a special meeting, and the president of the board has indicated that really regardless of how the vote goes tonight, that probably a special meeting might be in order. It might be an appropriate statement for the board at this time to schedule a special meeting. The special meeting could be canceled in the future if you decide not to have it, but you would then be able to present, and I think the information could be presented to the San Francisco Board of Trustees this evening, that the Board of Governors has scheduled a special meeting on the subject of City College of San Francisco. So that's something for the board to think about at this time.
Chancellor, what would your advice be on that?
Well, that'd be perfectly okay. I will say this, the staff, we have met several times on this issue because we are deeply concerned. And certainly, we have sought, in fact, Steve was the one who brought to my attention the actual code that I read to you today, making it very clear that the Board of Governors, now, there are some regulations, and you may need to take some steps of additional regulations. That would be another thing to consider. But whatever steps you as a board want to make, but I think you're right. There ought to be some communication to City College of San Francisco Board of Trustees that this subject was discussed and that our board is very interested in what is happening. So that, however, whatever steps that you as a board think that you can communicate that, perhaps that communication would be well to be sent by email today.
Board member thoughts? Member Melamed.
Are we able to schedule it on September 20th? Morning, later in the day? Is that enough notice?
Well, you get the 27th, though.
Well, but 2 steps will have been taken.
Yeah, I think probably not on the 20th.
Okay.
I think probably not on the 20th, because I would think if we did schedule a special meeting at the same time, I would ask that the board chair of the San Francisco Board of Trustees come before us so that we have an opportunity and step to question, as well as the interim chancellor, who, by the way, is leaving quite shortly, as I understand.
Yes,
Which is
her
another piece of bad
contract
news.
is up on October 30th.
Yeah, so,
And you could, I guess, I don't know, I'd probably lean on Steve to give us an opinion here. You could say that it is your intention, you might say if necessary, but you can say it is your intention to call a special meeting during the first week of October or something like that, if you want to do, or in early October, if you want to give yourself some leeway. And you could say, we could pass a statement today that it is our intention to review this matter with a special meeting sometime in early October. I'm kind of thinking on the spot, so I don't.
Member Ramos.
In light of the interim leader's impending departure, what do we know about the plan for continuing leadership at the staff level at the district?
Well, what I do know is they've suspended their search for a chancellor.
They've suspended their search for a permanent chancellor, and they are now seeking for an interim chancellor. I will be honest with you, I think it's rather difficult for somebody to suddenly decide to step into that situation, So they have decided that perhaps the wiser thing, and they do have a search continuing for an interim chancellor when Dr. Fisher leaves on October 31st. So they probably, I don't know, I'm not, I'm not privy to all of their thinking, but I do know that that's what they're presently looking for an interim chancellor when Dr. Fisher leaves in late October.
Okay, so given the reality that you've alluded to, Chancellor, that, sort of like, let's be honest, who wants that job? I'm wondering, is this special trustee sort of just the logical step to take, whether they do it themselves or whether the Board of Governors decides
I
to
think
move
they
in that
need a
direction?
special trustee as well as an interim chancellor. And one of the things that is helpful with both an interim chancellor and a special trustee, these are individuals who have come in a sense, with a mission. They can make tough decisions. They're not permanent. And if a board, frankly, is smart, they realize that will give them some ability to act. And it has. It's worked that way in Lassen. It worked that way in Solano. We had a special trustee in Solano. They came in, made recommendations. The Board of Trustees followed those recommendations, and Solano was completely removed from any sanction. Same thing happened with Lassen. I think the same thing, they have a special trustee at College of the Redwoods. I think those kinds of things are helpful. But this one is a complex scene politically. That's, you know, however, I will say this. I think the city is in favor of a stronger fiscal management. There's no doubt that the mayor, when he appointed that replacement, he specifically appointed someone with fiscal management skills to be a trustee. So that sent a very strong signal that the city of San Francisco is concerned. The ties between the city of San Francisco and the City College of San Francisco are unusual, frankly. They have classified staff is tied together. I mean, it's an unusual situation. Like somebody can go from the City College of San Francisco to a classified staff position in the city and vice versa. So it's a little more complex. But at least I'd say the leadership, the political leadership of the city of San Francisco is in favor of a more fiscally honest situation.
Member McDougall.
I'd like to, suggest that we tentatively identify at least 2 weeks following September 27th as a time for a special meeting, and that we contact board members as to what time may work best. I think that's advisable because we can notify the district that obviously we're greatly concerned as a board about what is happening in City College of San Francisco. That number two, we hope and expect that they will exert appropriate local responsibility for solving the problem. However, we cannot avoid our responsibilities either. So we'll be looking very much at getting a report from them following the 27th, but in the interim have prepared for a meeting to follow up to look at what is a responsible course of action for us to follow.
Right.
That would be my recommendation.
Other comments?
Recommend Monday, October 1st.
Monday, October 1st. I am okay saying that the board, and transmitting that the board has agreed to schedule a meeting, a special meeting to discuss this situation. If you want to set a date now, and I agree with Member McDougall, it should be post-September 27. I'm okay with that too, but do we want to look at everybody's calendar now, or? Vice President?
Well, I'm okay with going because of the importance of the issue.
Yeah.
Going with any date, but if we could maybe coordinate just a little bit.
I think so too. One of the abilities I do have as chair is I can schedule a special meeting. So we will go ahead and do that post-September 27th. I will ask in Jerry and Steve, maybe staff, to maybe coordinate schedules to see what time is best. Furthermore, I will give some thought, and I'll ask Vice President Baca to give some thought with me and others weigh in as you see appropriate to what that meeting would look like. But for sure, it would be my intention to have their Board of Trustees chair the interim chancellor, and quite frankly, whoever is performing the financial duties within the district now as well. So, yes.
My question is, if they do choose to have a special trustee tonight, does our chancellor's office pick that special trustee?
It will be mutually picked by our office and by them. we will have, am I right about that, Eric? It is, it has to be a mutual thing. It's not,
And if if they do not choose one tonight and we do impose one on them, does that same rule apply about how the
then
person?
if we are to impose one on them, they have no choice.
Okay.
It's simply, we'll do the picking.
Okay,
Yeah, with the voluntary placement, the requested special trustee, the past practice has been that we'll present the district, the board with a list of candidates that we feel could do the job, and then they can work from that list. It's really important to find a good fit with the voluntary trustee, because the local board does retain its ability to, all its powers. And so the relationship between the special trustee and the board is critical, because it is a cooperative relationship. And
it retains its powers?
yeah,
Okay, so
so
that's different than when we choose one?
That's right. So in the voluntary placement, the special trustee is there to provide guidance and oversight, and does have the ability to block actions, what they call stay and rescind power. But it's a limited authority that the trustee has, and the board members retain their elected offices and all the power that comes with that. With a state-imposed trustee, it's a more severe form, and the locally elected board is actually stripped of their authority, and the special trustee takes on all those powers.
Okay, thank you.
And so this voluntary model, as the chancellor pointed out, has worked well in Lassen and Solano, and we definitely think it's the preferred route.
Mhm. Thank you.
So what I've heard is that the board would like to schedule a special meeting regarding the San Francisco City College situation after September 27th. And my feeling is we would do that regardless of the vote today or tonight. Okay? So we'll do that, and I'll ask staff to get everybody's schedules together. And it'd be good, we could, at that point, we could review the FICMAT report and other things as well. Okay, thank you, Chancellor.